And welcome back to the Alive and Free podcast. Today we're here with somebody else, as has been happening a lot recently, by the name of Beau Barron, Senior Vice President of Stat Wellness, somebody who's been on a journey. And Beau, welcome today. Well, thanks for taking the time to come and talk to all of us.
Yeah, man. Happy to be here. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. So I want to start in a place that maybe you've talked about this a lot before, but from an angle that I've been pondering myself personally, and as I looked at your own history and your own story, I thought maybe this would be an interesting question to start from, and it's from the standpoint of fragility. So like years and years ago, I remember walking. I was teaching at Arizona State University. I remember walking out and I was complaining about all these people that had like tenured jobs and whatnot. And then it was like the next year that the government cut funding on all of these particular types of educational incentives, and so people lost their jobs. And I thought for a second, like, man, I have this guarantee of like these people had a guarantee or they thought they did, and then within a day or within a month or within a year, all of it was swept away. And I've looked at that with regard to physical ailments and well-being as well, or people's financial stability, or any number of other things where there's this sense of we wander through life with a sense of security, a sense of safety, a sense of well-being. And a lot of that is like a mental construct we've made. And then one thing sort of takes it away. And as I was looking at your story, and I'm like, okay, here's a guy who was helping people. Maybe I don't know what your concept of your life was, but you were in a spot where maybe it seemed like everything was sort of under control, and then it wasn't. And
Yep.
I'm curious about what that did, what that drove you to, how that affected your faith. Or like, this is a big question, right? But this is sort of like where I feel like the meat of it dives in, because most of the people I deal with are people who their life is out of control for whatever reason. Something's happened, and victimhood can show up real quick. So, so,
Mhm.
so walk us through your story about how all this stuff. I mean, it's related to what you're doing now, obviously, but about how all this
Yeah.
stuff started.
Yeah, totally. So, I think you touched on something that is really like at the core of who I am, and something that really showed up through this cancer battle that I found myself in, and that really is the like a sense of control, right? Like I just to back way up. I come from a home where addiction was very much present, and that was a big part of kind of the environment that I grew up in as a child,
Like what kind of we're
and
talking about alcoholism, or we're talking about other kinds of addictive behaviors, or
alcohol, drugs. My dad was struggled with all of those, and so I think that environment and growing up in that as a young child really made me a pretty controlling person, right? Like I just was very much in tune with trying to curate the environment that I wanted to be in because my home life was just not that. And so yeah, I've always, to your point, kind of had or felt a need for a sense of control. And so to kind of fast forward a little bit, I
let's pause for a second because I
Mhm.
think this is important.
Yeah.
I think it's an important point that I don't hear many people make, is that the response to anything out of control in the environment is to seek control, and in addictive behaviors in particular, the people around you seek control. My wife did that when I was in the middle of it.
Mhm.
You know, it was very much like micromanaging the kids' schedules and exactly what went where and like what kinds of like the foods and everything, like in a much deeper way that I don't think she became aware of until later. Her mom made a comment at one point when she found out everything. This sort of like control aspect is huge. Nobody likes to feel out of control. We don't
Yeah.
actually want to control it ourselves. We
Yeah.
we would like it all to go okay, but in the absence of that, in chaos, like control is interesting. So I just think that's a fair point. The people listening would know this very, very well. There's a
Yeah,
lot of
I would almost say it's almost like a sense of internalizing, or like uh kind of turning inward, right? Like I just think back on who I was as a kid, and I was very outgoing very early. And then when I kind of became aware of the things that were going on and just the turmoil in our lives, I became like really serious, really quick. And like one of my aunts recently well, I think it was last year. Like I asked her, I was like, so what was I like as a kid? And she was like, you were a very serious child. And I think back on that and I was like, yeah, that's because, I kind of internalized things um, and had a very, you know, um, I don't know if I would say I was like scared to be myself. I don't know if that was necessarily the case. I think it was just like when there's a lot of chaotic things going on around you that shouldn't be happening, even at an early age, you sort of are just like, okay, well, I'm here. I can't, I'm a child. I can't just like run away or physically escape this. So it's just like I kind of just like, shell up and kind of deal with it until until I am able to control what I can control. And then when you get to the age where you can, it's like, okay, I'm gonna start making my own life and doing things the way that I know are the right way to do them. And I always kind of also explain, I think I have always been the type of person where I look at a lot of my friends growing up and they had a great example of who to be and what to do and how to do it. And I always learn best from being able to see what not to do. And I think that, came from my experience with my dad of like, yeah, okay, I definitely don't want to do that. So what do I need to do in order to like position myself in life and moving forward, whether that be personally or professionally, to ensure that I'm not, kind of going down that path. So,
Let's talk about the benefits and the drawbacks of that response. Like, there are obviously some great things that came from the fact that you could observe this and you could make conscious decisions about where to lead your life, right? And
mhm.
uh, maybe talk about some of those for a second. Then I want to come back to like, and with that, let's talk about some of the other things that maybe we weren't aware of at the time that came with it.
Yeah, I think I've always been like a really driven person, very curious person, very driven. I feel like I've checked a lot of boxes, in my life, and I did undergrad at Auburn University. I worked as a full-time firefighter and EMT while I was there to kind of help pay my way through college. Then from there, like dove headfirst into the medical device space and so I've kind of been in healthcare my whole career. I would say fairly well, one thing that sort of sticks out is I've always been my own harshest critic, right? Like I'm pretty hard on myself. And I think that goes back to that just sort of controlling mindset. I think those two things kind of run parallel with each other as I expect a lot out of myself. And if I'm not able to uh meet those goals or whatever that may be, I come down on myself pretty hard. And so that leads to I've struggled with anxiety, and I wouldn't necessarily say depression. It's much more anxiety, which is like a driving factor of me getting things done, which is not necessarily a healthy way to, structure your day-to-day
Gotcha.
to-do list. So yeah, that's kind of a long answer, but yeah.
No, no, that's good. I mean, because this is something that I don't, people are aware of the issue, which is that anxiety is not healthy.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, a certain amount of anxiety is useful. And I think that that's what we've learned growing up. You know, like
Hmm.
you saw your parents, you saw other people, you saw what was going on. You saw people all over the world who were successful, and most of them model the example of if I beat myself up, if I'm anxious about something, if I worry about it, then I'll that'll motivate me to do it, and then I'll get stuff done, and eventually I'll be able to calm down.
Yeah.
Eventually I'll be able to relax. So it's only temporary, but they say it's only temporary for decades, you know?
Yeah. That's right.
And that's just what we've been modeled. So like the way that we've learned from the time we were kids in order to make changes in the world is to get upset about things that are bad, to judge them, to like come up with a better plan, to make a solution, to look for problems and optimize. Like these are all, and that's not learning by joy and curiosity. That's not learning from
Yeah.
gratitude. The things that medically we've seen are the most potent in terms of health and well-being. That's not learning from those things.
Mhm.
So despite our knowledge that the good way of learning, play, fun, curiosity, and whatnot that we did as kids is healthier, we still tend to operate this other way. Do you feel like the control aspect increases the anxiety? Like with yourself, you said you come down hard on yourself.
Mhm.
It was just a thought I had while you were saying it. Do you think you come down harder on yourself because you quote unquote should be able to control yourself, if anything?
Yeah, I think I get disappointed in myself. I
Hmm.
think that that's kind of the root of what you're saying is yeah, I definitely I that's what I was getting at when I was like I feel like these two things kind of run parallel
Okay.
is um you know the idea of me I should be able to control everything on my to-do list today. I should knock off everything and then some, right? And if I don't do that, I'm like, why did I not do that? You know, like I I shouldn't have done this or I shouldn't have done that or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think it's just I think it's just a you know type A personality that that can a lot of times like present itself in unhealthy ways. So
Sure, sure.
yeah.
And you're talking type A, like somebody who's really driven, but just,
Mhm.
isn't really calibrated their scope of vision with their capacity. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
fair, fair enough. Okay, cool. So you're in this spot where, okay, you grew up in whatever way you grew up. Obviously, great things happened while you were young too. It wasn't that your whole life
Mhm.
was trauma or misery or anything of that
Yeah.
sort.
Yeah.
Um, and and I say that because I don't know, it's a really easy trap to fall into is like we want to talk about our story. So we have to characterize each period as this
Oh
was
yeah.
hell and this is no, like,
Yeah.
we told jokes, we looked at things, we played with dogs, we did all, we jumped fences, we
Mhm.
drank hose water, whatever we did as
Yeah.
kids, right?
Well,
Um,
so it's actually funny that you say that because it's like, I look back on my childhood. I actually had a great childhood. My dad who struggled with a drug addiction is actually a great guy. He's still in my life. We, um, have a great relationship today, and he's 34 years sober, clean and sober.
wow,
So,
great.
yeah, so awesome. And so like, even though that was a big part of my childhood and like I think part of my formative years, I kind of look back on it and I'm like, man, I don't know if I would change that for anything, like as difficult as it was, it really helped make me who I am today. And I have a younger sister and I think, that affected her in a little bit of a different way with her being, 3 years younger than me. So all that to be said, like we had a great childhood. We were very well taken care of. It's just, you look back and it's like there are some things that, you know, to my earlier point, I'm like, okay, I definitely don't want to do that. Like I
Yeah.
need to model my life around that, like take that stuff out. So yeah.
Which is it's a really healthy way to look at things.
Mhm.
Because I wouldn't have picked that up, if all I heard about your dad was that, yeah, you grew up and he dealt with all these things. That leaves me hanging in my own,
Yeah.
okay, well, then his life must have been blah, 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 all the
Yeah.
extra stuff that we throw into the story. In reality, you're like, no, my life was filled with a lot of events, and some of them I learned some really deep things from. Others I wish I had learned deep things from, and
Yeah.
others I didn't learn anything from. And that sounds like the rest of life, so
Yeah.
it's really beautiful. Okay, so we fast forward and we get you through college. You've been working, you're a firefighter, you're in these medical device. What were you doing with medical devices?
Yeah, so I started with Stryker Orthopedics, and I was in the operating room all day, every day. So I was on the sales side, um, working with and consulting surgeons in the operating room, for specifically knee and hip replacements.
Okay.
So, so yeah, and then kind of just kept, diving headfirst into that space, and so yeah, that's kind of where professionally I started my healthcare career.
Okay. And then at some point in time, you had to receive health care instead of
Yeah.
the one working in healthcare. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So yeah. So it was kind of well, the whole story is just wild how it unfolded. So it started with a a spot on my gum, like a swollen spot on the right side of my gum. And so I went into my dentist and, just thought, it's probably me like eating a chip or something that got stuck between my tooth and my gum. And so he looked at it and he was like, well, you really need to go see a periodontist who specializes in gum tissue and things like that. So I went to a periodontist. They did a root scaling. We're like, we can't find anything. Um, so they're like, if it gets any worse, like come back. And it got worse. And so a week later, I went back. By that time, it had kind of jumped from the outside of my jaw to the inside of my jaw. And it was continuing to like become discolored. So it was turning black. And I was like, well, that's super weird. And and so they did another root scaling, couldn't find anything. So then they said, we think you might need a root canal. You need to go see an endodontist. So went to an endodontist in Buckhead. So I live in Atlanta, so went to an endodontist there. Um, and she was actually the first one. She was like, all right, well, let's do a CT scan and take a look at this. So she did a non-contrast CT scan, which basically like is like a 3D view of your mandible. And she was the first one that said, hey, you have thickening on the right side of your jaw compared to your left. It doesn't necessarily jump out as like a sphere, she was like, nothing really jumps out. It's just like a slight thickening, right? And so it is atypical. And she was like, if it were me, I would get that biopsied. So after that, she was like, but come in, let's take a look, let's see if you need to have a root canal. So did all the testing that they do, and she was like, "You don't need a root canal. I'm going to send you to an oral surgeon." So she referred me to an oral surgeon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, went to him, and at this point I'm like freaking out because I'm like, does this have something to do with cancer, And he was like, absolutely not. You have nothing to worry about as it relates to cancer. This is nothing to be concerned about. You just grind your teeth at night. You have a stressful job. You chew more heavily on your right side. Like all these things can cause thickening on one side compared to the other. And I said, okay, so that put me at ease. But he was like, we do need to figure out what's going on. So he, yeah.
Sorry.
So,
It's
so
like,
th
no, no,
this,
it's fine, but we got to figure it
yeah.
out.
So this like led down multiple different rabbit holes where he sent me to a different endodontist. That endodontist, I bounced him back and forth between them. They did a tori removal surgery where they shaved down the inside of my jaw, which was terrible. I never recommend that to anyone. Super painful and wound up being completely unnecessary. And then they decided, okay, well, we need to do a root canal. So they did a root canal. That didn't help. Went back to the second root canal. That didn't help. And at this point, like I'm able to feel my heartbeat through my jaw with anything that elevates my heart rate. Like I'm talking, yeah, I'm a pretty active person and like I was working out a lot and I could just feel like throbbing through my face. And I was like, this is not a tooth issue. This is a jaw situation. And so after all of that, then it led to, well, the only thing left to do is we really can just extract the tooth. So you need to come in, we'll take the tooth out that we think is the problem. So they did that. When they took it out, they were like, your tooth is totally fine. Like it's a healthy looking tooth. Like that's a big red flag. We're not sure what's going on. Come back in and let's do a biopsy of the tissue. And at this point, I know something's up. I know that something's amiss and we need to figure out what's going on. And so I get there and I'm like, hey, I really would appreciate it if you would do a biopsy of my jawbone as well. Like you're going to be in there, you're going to have a clear shot at my jaw, like just take a piece of the jawbone. And his response was, we have no reason to do that. Clinically, there's no reason why we need to do that. There's nothing to be worried about here as it relates to anything to do with your bone. And I just pressed on him. I just said, "Hey, look, I like if nothing else, this is gonna help me sleep well at night. I'm asking you as your patient, please do this for me. And so he was like, "Well, we'll see when we get in there," because he didn't want to take out any more bone because he needed as much bone in there to be able to place the implant back in. And so he gets in there, and I'll never forget. Like they finish up. I'm still sitting in the chair. He holds the clear petri dish over my head, and he's like, "Okay, here's the tissue that we needed to biopsy, and there's that little piece of bone that you wanted me to get." And kind of not dismissively, but just like, yeah, sort of. And so he he's like, all right, we're gonna send both these off to pathology and we'll see what comes back. So 10 days goes by. I'm at the office with our CEO in our conference room, like getting ready for a meeting. My cell phone rings. It's my oral surgeon, and he's like, hey, the tissue came back clear, but the bone came back positive for osteosarcoma, which is bone cancer.
Yeah.
So I was diagnosed with mandibular osteosarcoma, which is it's super rare. It's 0.06% diagnosis rate. So, large hospital systems like Emory and Mayo and UAB and all, they probably see one of me every year. Um, and so yeah, that was kind of how the journey started, and then how everything unfolded after that was pretty unbelievable too. So
Yeah. So, okay, cool. At that point, you've rec you've been okay, everything's fine. Now it's not fine. Now it's fine. Now it's not fine. You start to suspect things. All the doctors are pushing back, and you're like, look, just for peace of mind. Now it's confirmed. All of your sense of like, I'm okay, my life is going to go, I know the future I have ahead of me is the one that I have. All the guarantee goes away. All of that goes away. And what we're left with is what? Did you feel fragile? Did you feel like a victim? How much uncertainty was there? What did that do? Or were you like that? Well, I'm a firefighter. We just push through this thing. Like what was your reaction?
no, so I'm very much aware of I was very much aware of what that diagnosis meant.
What does it
My
mean for people who aren't familiar with it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so it's different for me than it is for, the most common osteosarcoma patients, which are pediatric patients. So pediatric patients who are diagnosed with osteosarcoma, most of the time their tumors are found in long bones. So
Yeah.
so think femur, tibia, humerus, that type of thing. Their prognosis, it's basically a 50% survival rate at 5 years. Mine, being, I'm older. I was 37 when I was diagnosed. It was found in my mandible. So mandibular osteosarcoma in males normally presents in males between the ages of 32 or no, I'm sorry, 31 and 36. So I was like just out of that range. But that prognosis is a 5 year survival rate of 75%. So it's a little bit better.
Okay.
But still, it's like I mean, I remember telling my wife, I was like, so they're telling me that, we're gonna take four balls and put them into a bag, and one of them's red, and I have to draw out of that to see if I'm gonna live or die.
Fair. Did you
And
have kids at the time?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
At the time, my son was 2 and my daughter was 5.
Okay. You
Uh,
didn't tell them, I'm assuming, much.
so we did have a conversation with them. We sat down, we actually, ordered this book online that like kind of helps you have that conversation with really young kids. So we did that, but they didn't have really any understanding of what was going on in like the true sense of it.
Yeah, neither
Um,
did I. My dad was called to war, the first Iraq war, and they said us we were
yeah.
in the Volvo. I had been like shifting gears with him on the road. We sitting in the driveway. He'd been listening to some news program. Turns off the radio. I think we're getting out, and then he's like, "Okay, son. All right, do you know what this means?" And I'm like, "No idea." He's like, "I
Yeah.
might be going to
Yeah.
war." No idea. They rounded us up like a few days later once he was deployed. And they're praying over us. They're giving us blessings. They're talking about his life story so we can remember him. No clue. So yeah,
Yeah.
little kids,
Yeah.
like what is death? Our
Yeah.
society does, it's not a main feature of our society. We try to hide it as much as possible. So how could you
Yeah.
understand it?
Yeah, for sure. And so I went into kind of, oh, well, initially I went into like full on panic mode day of, because the other thing, so my great uncle passed away from osteosarcoma. Ironically, my dog, which was like my child, passed away from osteosarcoma. We amputated his leg, put him through 6 rounds of chemo,
Ooh,
the whole thing. And then on top of that, like when I was at Stryker, I had worked in the operating room with a lot of these pediatric patients who were having to have, total knee replacements done when they're like 12 years old. And so I'm very much familiar with osteosarcoma and what that meant and how aggressive that type of cancer was. And so just to kind of like back up to when I was diagnosed, like how things unfolded that weekend and then up,
yeah.
that following week was just like far beyond anything I ever could have like orchestrated. So before I jump into this, just keep in mind, like what I'm diagnosed with is like 0.06% of cancer, right? It's super rare. And and so the day I'm diagnosed, I used to work with a surgical oncologist. Dr. Kevin Wynn at Piedmont, and he and I, had become friends. Like we would go deer hunting together and stuff like that. He's a great guy, but I hadn't talked to him in a couple of years. And when I was diagnosed, the first thing I thought was I have to figure out if this has spread. Like, has this metastasized anywhere else in my body? And the only way to figure that out is to get a CT scan. And so I'm diagnosed at like 1 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Get home. I'm in a full-blown panic attack. I'm talking like can barely breathe, like throwing up. It's bad. And so I just call one of my best friends. I'm like, hey, my wife's at home. Our daughter's homesick. I'm in the front yard having a panic attack. I need you to just come pick me up and let's go drive. And so he shows up. I get into his car, and one of the first people I think to call is Dr. Wynn. And man, he answered like first ring. I hadn't talked to this guy in 2 years. He's in the operating room all day, every day. Like he doesn't answer his phone. And he just picked up and was like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And I obviously was like, not great. Here's the situation. Diagnosed with osteosarcoma. I need to figure out if it's spread. And he was just like, he said, meet me at Piedmont ER in 10 minutes. He goes, I'm going to scan you from head to toe. We'll get you answers. And so drove over there, and by, 3:30 or 4, um, like we had full head to toe CT scans, determining that it had not spread. It was still localized in my jaw. Um, which was just like a huge peace of mind. I mean, like I don't know how I would have been able to make it through to, the following week. And that's assuming I would have even been able to have gotten scans that week. I mean, it takes a long time to be able to get in for those, right?
Do you feel
And
like that moment? I mean, because we could go through all of the reactions to that moment, but like those are the types of moments that sort of like leave an impression on you because they're so intense, right? And I'm sure you've like reflected on it since then. How long ago was that?
so it'll be 2 years in August.
Okay. So two
Yeah.
years ago, you have a moment that's that level of intensity where you're confronting the reality that humans are mortal, so they don't live forever. It's no longer a myth,
Mhm.
but a potentiality and sometime soon, possibly.
Mhm.
How did that reorient your life? What did that do? Like,
Yeah. Like
I mean, I'm sure you've
I,
reflected on it a lot and you've had a lot of different thoughts about it, but I
Mhm.
like to say assume, but
Yeah, so I was sitting like I remember sitting in the ER waiting on those results to come back, and it was just me and my best friend Grant, and I just remember looking at him and being like, dude, this is the first time where I'm like I 100% could very likely die. Like within, and not like right now, but within like a few months, like I could definitely be dead, depending on what this shows, right? Like if this came back and showed it had spread to my lungs my brain, everywhere else, like I'm done. And and so yeah, it was a weight that I don't really know if you can put into words. But then it's also kind of followed by, for me at least, it was almost like a sense of peace.
Hmm.
Um, which also is very difficult to explain. Like you're obviously super scared. I mean, I got two young kids, a wife, and obviously love all of them very much. And so you're thinking about that, but then at the same time, you're kind of like, man, I'm like totally not in control of any of this. And so like I think a peace, sense of peace kind of comes with that. Um,
There's something really beautiful about that awareness. I
mhm.
It doesn't make any logical sense ever to
No.
say, hey, when a human finally discovers that he doesn't know everything, that he's not in control of pretty much anything, and he's just sits with that, that even if there's terror running through his system, there's also peace underneath it. But
Yeah.
I've seen it over and over and over again. Even there's a doctor, Livingston, late 1800s, I think, or maybe early 1900s, who wrote about hunting in the what did the Serengeti, he's out there hunting lions out there, and he's up on a bluff, and he's got his gun out, and he's like looking down over, or I don't know if he was hunting lions or whatever, but he turns around and a lioness is in the air leaping at him and just like tears him off of this bluff. They fall down to the bottom, and he's just laying there kind of lifeless, looking at this maw in his face. And he describes this experience. Um, for those of you listening, I did write about it in my book in the chapter on pain, so go there. I don't have the exact words memorized. But he describes this experience about it was like this tremendous peace came through his whole system, and this tremendous like awareness of the beauty of the, even if though it was a terrifying moment, the beauty of that moment and like everything that was going on. And his thought was, wow, if this is what God built into the system, so that death does not have to be like this terrifying experience for people. He's like, I just have a deeper respect for what's really going on that I was never aware of.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely not to your point. Like, there's nothing logical about it. I mean, the logical side of me is what was panicking, right?
Yeah,
And so that sense of peace is I think you know came from God and is something that really kind of has grown into like a cornerstone of just kind of who I am and how I live my life. Yeah.
did it change how you pray? Did it change how you interact with your family? Like, talk about that.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, it 100% did. I mean, it kind of changed it if I think back on who I was then and where we are now as a family and personally as a man. Um I don't think I would change it, man. Like like it really was such a blessing in my life. And like if you go back, I mean, if you read the Bible, like James 1, 2 through 4, it talks about like finding joy in hard times, right? And being able to leverage difficult moments for good. And so that was always my prayer from the very beginning. Was it was not I was under no disillusion, or I was fully aware of my mortality, and it hit me square in the face, right? And I know that that not everyone who believes in God and who prays regularly is going to be healed, and that's okay. But my prayer became instead like, God, just use this for good. And that's part of the reason why I'm talking to you today, right? Um is to, try and use my situation and all the pain and the suffering that came with that, and be able to encourage other people, and just tell my story and try and do a little bit of good with some of the bad that came my way.
Yeah.
So
What's interesting, there's like a modern Orthodox saint by the name of Paisios. He lived on Mount Athos for a long time. He died in 94. Um, He stated one time that cancer has saved more people than pretty much anything else on the planet in this modern
That's
time.
interesting. Yeah.
And I do think it's interesting to maybe dwell on the point for a second to say, what if the highest good that any of our troubles can do is that it is for ourselves only, and that if any other good comes from it, that's awesome too. But to suggest that cancer is the biggest good that it did was for you. And
Mm,
we're always trying to like, well, let me take this hard thing and make it at least good for other people. And like the without acknowledging the benefit that it was. So he prayed at the end of his life. So many people came to him with cancer. He used to tell him like, just do whatever the doctor says. Afterwards, when he had cancer, he's like, if I'd have known what the doctors were telling him to do, maybe I would have given him different advice. Um, but he was like, he 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 had, I don't remember what kind of cancer he died from ultimately, but he had prayed like, Lord, give me cancer in place of giving it to other people so that they can be saved, right? So in the end of his life, he's got cancer. He's going in, he's having all these tests and whatnot. And he says at the end, and he'd spent 40, 50 years. I mean, he lived till he was about seven. He lived till he was 70. Somewhere around 50 years of his life in prayer and fasting and all night vigils and studies and all these types of things. So he'd spent his whole life doing that. And he said that he had learned more about God and had developed more spiritually from his cancer than in all those years of spiritual ascesis combined.
yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, for
And
sure.
and like that's the gift, right? To suggest that
Hmm.
what you've been given isn't a hard moment, but just an intense moment
Yeah.
that on the other end of it offers you the opportunity to be in deeper communion with the one who gave you your life in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, for
And then
sure.
when you have a person like that who is more aware of that, then their interactions with others become different, and then those others can sort of benefit secondarily from it. But I think it's worth dwelling on for.
No, yeah. I mean, look, I think like I think my being diagnosed with cancer is going to have um positive impact generationally, right? Like it's changed how I think about raising our kids. It's changed how present I am in their lives. It's changed um how I love my wife, how I, try to spend time with her and how like my sense of gratitude day to day, like, I went through my entire career thinking I just want to make more money, make more money. How am I going to make more money to be able to get a bigger house and do these things? And it was like, you know, such a just hollow existence, right? And to kind of get a hard, I'm talking a hard reality check, um, to where it's not like, oh yeah, I hear these things. I hear that I need to be present. I hear that I need to pray more. I hear that I need to be thankful for the things that I have. And like you hear that, but like when you really have it land in your lap and hit you in the face, it's like, okay, you know, um, let's let's start doing the things that we need to do that really matter. And in my opinion, that is, loving my wife, loving my kids, raising them in a faith-centered family where they're very much aware of God and they understand what that means and how to talk to God and how to pray and we joined our church, which this is another kind of crazy side to the story. We had just started going to Christ Church Presbyterian in Buckhead, probably about 3 months before I was diagnosed. We just started going there with my cousin and so anyways, get the diagnosis on that Friday. The next Sunday, the whole sermon is on James 1, 2 through 4, right? Like finding joy in hard times. And then even further down from that, like the sermon is on a meditative series called Do Not Waste Your Cancer by John Piper. And so like, I was just sitting there being like, man, this is so like far past anything I could have orchestrated. It was just it was wild. And then this is even crazier. So my roommate when I lived in Denver, so I lived in Denver for 4 years, but my roommate there who also worked for Stryker, he's one of my best friends. When I was diagnosed on Friday, I called him Saturday morning at probably like 8:30 or 9 to tell him, hey man, I've been diagnosed with bone cancer. I just wanted to make you aware, like kind of talk through it with him. And and as I'm explaining what I've been diagnosed with, he's like, "Hey, sorry to cut you off. Do you mind if I just put you on speakerphone really quick?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he was like, "Well, Brittany, who is his sister-in-law, he was like, Brittany's in the car, and I'm pretty sure this is what she does." And I'm like, "Dan, what do you mean this is what she does? I've been diagnosed with like a super rare form of cancer. This is definitely not what your sister-in-law does." And and I know Brittany. We hung out in Denver when she was, in
Okay.
med school and everything. But so I always knew her as an ENT, which she is, but she's highly specialized apparently. So puts me on speakerphone and just happens to be sitting in the car with Brittany Howard, who's one of the top head and neck surgeons at Mayo Clinic in Arizona, and she does all the surgeries that I was going to have and was very familiar with what I was diagnosed with, talked me through, my diagnosis, my prognosis. She was like, send me your pathology report. So I stayed on the phone with them for like an hour. And and I'll never forget. She was like, Beau, she goes, look, this is super hard. I know you're terrified, but she said, I know you and I know this disease. And if I were a betting man, I would bet on you 100 times every single day of the week to beat this. And I was like, that's what I need to hear. And so, like, God putting people like that in my
Yep.
life within 12 hours of me being diagnosed, and then you move into, the sermon that Sunday.
Yep.
Um, it was just the whole thing, and then we're flying out to Arizona on Thursday to go meet with Brittany and their whole team. It was just the way things like unfolded in such like a bang bang bang
Yeah.
way was just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the one who never misses the fall of a sparrow and has counted every hair of our head when we haven't even
Mhm.
counted all of them.
Yep.
These are the types of things that you're like, oh, okay, there's more. And
Hmm.
what's interesting is that that's a reality that you only really grasp. You don't understand it for certain. You can't describe it necessarily, but you only grasp by participation.
Yeah.
I read a book
Yeah.
recently, Journey to Reality by Zachary Porku. By the way, anybody listening, I highly recommend it. It was great. He's breaking down that religion is really asking the question, what is real? And based on your answer, your whole world changes. So if the only thing that's real is like scientific, materialist, whatever to you, then your ethics, your morals, your decisions are all going to be around that kind of thing. But if
Mhm.
the world involves a being who created everything and whose whole essence is love, and this entire self, and like there's an invisible world, then like okay, your relationship to that is going to be part of how you operate in the world.
Yeah.
And his big one of the things that as I was reading it, felt was so profound was his distinction between most of us are looking at there's objective reality and there's subjective reality, and he's like, no, 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 no. Yeah, okay, we can talk about that all day long, but really, there's a vast swath of knowledge and understanding that we gain that isn't by any other means than participation. Like you don't know a person by reading about them and you don't know a person by thinking about them and having a subjective experience. You
Yeah.
know a person by interacting with them, and your very interaction changes them, and their interaction changes you. And then you know them in a way that cannot be encompassed those ways. And knowing God this way, and knowing that like there is this other world requires participation. You can't just be created with that understanding. It has to come through time, experience, and participation, which is,
Yeah.
in an intense way, exactly what you've been given, and I assume are continuing to be given.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean 100% continuing to be given. I mean it's a it's a beautiful battle every single day. And I mean, I had my uh year and a half scans, post-op scans, um, yesterday, so everything was all clear.
Oh,
And
good.
yeah, so praise God for that. And it's crazy. Like you look at these scans. So what they wound up having to do surgically, right? Like I went through 6 rounds of chemo, super intense chemo, Monday through Friday from 9 to 5,
Ooh,
every third week. So I would have 2 weeks off, and
wow.
and it would just kick my butt. And but then I tried to stay active through the entire thing, right? Like I tried to work out. I probably worked out more through chemo than I even do now. And and we can talk about why that is, but then it led into my surgery. So my surgery, what they did was they had to remove the lower right half of my jaw. So they took out the whole lower right half of my jaw, and they replaced it with the fibula from my left leg. So they took the bone out of my left leg, and rebuilt my entire jaw with it and put anchors in. So I was able to, get new teeth and everything put in. Um,
For those
but
of
it
you
was
that don't know, your fibula is the bone that's sort of like the outside of what your
yeah.
calf's attached to or hangs off of.
Mhm.
So he has a
Yeah.
he's got a
Yeah. So
mean bite
now,
now.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So now I got some steel teeth to work with. And, but yeah, I have no fibula in my left leg. Um, and have some pretty gnarly looking scars on my leg and my neck. But given everything, man, it really beats the alternative. I'm super thankful and grateful to be where I am right now. So
Yeah. I wonder about Job, you know. I mean, what would have happened if it had come back and right now there's no evidence of disease and it's like praise God and like he's like, "Oh, everybody died and my kids died too. Praise God." You know, like
yeah, yeah, it's
ah,
tough.
man. Because like in the end, this is what we're talking about. Like he gave you cancer or allowed it to grow or however you want to talk about it.
Hmm.
And as a result, something else has shifted that's deeper than physicality. Like your heart
Yeah.
changed, your life changed, and regardless of how much time you do or don't have left, that is a seed that gets planted in it and grows in a different way than anything we could have predicted, you know?
Yeah, I mean, man, I've had more meaningful conversations with people in my life that I otherwise would never have been able to have because of this diagnosis. And like honestly, like I'm working where I work now because of this diagnosis. And I went through um, a lot of pain and suffering to be able to get to where I am. But again, like I don't think I would change it because I love what I do. I love the people in my life. I love the conversations that I've been able to have, and how I've been able to dive deeper into those relationships in like a truly meaningful way. Um, so yeah, man, I mean it's there's a lot of blessing in that. So
Yeah. Okay. So you work. So, I mean, this is all fairly recent. I mean, you just had your year and a
mhm.
half scan. That's wonderful. But all of this shifted. So you're no longer selling medical equipment
Yeah,
in the same way. Um, and you're not like wandering around in operating rooms and you're not trying to figure out how much money you can get and how big a house you can get and how many helicopters
yeah.
you can ride and whatever else, which big game you're going to take down or whatnot. Not that those aren't interesting questions, but your life's focused in a different way. And so you end up in a different situation. Talk about that for a sec.
Yeah, so so when I was going through, well, right when I got diagnosed, I had a friend of mine here that's kind of in the startup ecosystem here in Atlanta, Kellyanne O'Neill. She reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I really think you should reach out to a company in Atlanta called Stat Wellness." And at that time, I think they had one location, maybe two.
Yeah, what are there now?
And
Seven. I was
Now
looking
they're
at,
up to seven.
yeah, I
We
was gonna
should
say
be,
seven. I was
we'll
looking
be
at
at
the
eight
website
by
just earlier.
August.
Yeah.
And and so anyway, she was like, you should reach out to these people. Like they can really help you kind of optimize and manage your health outside of just the, oncology route, right? Like, so your oncologist is gonna look at you through a straw, and they're going to be implementing chemo, surgery, radiation, immunotherapy, all of those
Yeah.
things, really just to keep you alive. And so I was like, well, there's so much outside of that that's really important to keep my energy levels up, to keep my mind right, to make sure I'm not, because a big thing for me was like I'm so used to being active that if my energy is just tanked and I can't do anything and I'm laying around bald and throwing up all day, like that, I'm 100% going to get depressed.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I reached out to Stat Wellness, got set up with a call, and found out very quickly that the people who founded it and who own it are actually next door neighbors, like right next door neighbors to my brother-in-law. And so I had known them for probably 3 years at this point. I just never really knew what they did.
Okay.
And so they were kind enough to set me up with a free membership. And so they did, comprehensive blood panels, like much more detailed blood panels than what my oncology team was doing. Um, they set me up with a dietitian, a movement plan, so like, workouts and things like that. Um, so it really was like a fully kind of all-encompassing approach to my health. And really the way that I thought about it as a patient was, as long as they're not telling me to not do something my oncologist is telling me, or do something different than my oncologist is telling me, if they're that's essentially like, okay, well, this is like a net positive impact to my health in general and my ability to fight this disease as I go through these treatments. And so they identified, two vitamin deficiencies, and got me dialed in on a like a keto diet where I cut out all sugar with the exception of fruits, like right out of the gate. And then they were also like, hey, look, if you're going through chemo and like you're gonna have really low energy, and like your testosterone's not low, but we could get it up just a touch to get you, some of that added energy to kind of keep you at your baseline. And then I also, was working out every day. And so I mean, there were days like, and I was on like one of the most potent chemo regimens on the market. Like I was on doxorubicin and ifosfamide, and it will knock you on your butt. Like it really will. And so Monday and Tuesday I could manage, like I could come home, I could still do a workout, but then, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, my goal, by the time Thursday and Friday hit, like my goal was to like do a lap around the chemo ward and just like get some steps in. But I had the mindset of like, regardless of what I do, I'm going to do something. Um, and so being able to have them kind of walk alongside me through that was really cool. Um, and just being kind of like a consistent added layer of encouragement was great. So,
That's great. And so how so you're working for them now as like a
oh
senior
yeah,
vice
sorry.
president. So like
Yeah.
you obviously okay, cool. They helped you out. They have like I
Yeah.
mean it sounds like look, we understand that health and wellness is a big thing and that preventative medicine is incredibly important. And there aren't really, at least in the United States right now, any real like systematic structures for that type of attention or care. Most of the United States is built around emergency medicine or symptom reduction. And so, and there's a lot of people out there. I mean, I just talked to Daniel Rudyak of ReadyRx a little bit ago, who's trying to do some things. So these guys are, I mean, if you look at the website on is it statwellness.com? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yep. Statwellness.com.
So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, they what do they do? They physical therapy, you've got nutritional work, you've got so dietitian stuff, blood panels. What else? Anything else I'm missing?
Yeah, so the way that I kind of always describe is really there's like three buckets, right? So you have medicine, which is a functional medicine practice. You have movement, which is, fitness, strength training, things like that, and then you have physical therapy. So those three buckets, and we're exploring now potentially adding a mental health as like a fourth bucket, because if we did that, like I think we would have an all-encompassing like true, not just for the buzzword, but like a true holistic kind of approach to functional medicine. Um, and yeah, so like, the idea is we have all of it under one roof. So you can come in and you can do strength training and fitness classes and everything that you would normally get at a traditional gym. But with that membership comes comprehensive blood testing, and you're able to meet with a clinician to be able to dial in, any type of additional supplements that you may need to really just try and optimize your health. And I don't think, well, to my knowledge, there's not any other models on the market right now that offer the, in-person, like functional
I haven't
medicine,
seen any. Yeah.
fitness, and physical therapy all under one like roof in a brick and mortar location.
I haven't seen any. I've seen a lot of people developing sort of apps to be able to give you that data in your
Hmm.
hand and like coordinate among different
Yeah.
providers and which is, maybe something that is very useful or AI diagnosis. I've had people reach out to me
Mhm.
trying wanting to pitch those things and but in terms of like I was surprised when I went to check it out and I was like, wow, did they have like in-person centers and gyms? What
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
surprise to me. I was expecting
Mhm.
something more along those lines. So that's awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, man.
So
Yeah.
then
So,
how did you go from being the patient um to the one who's now like working at upper levels with it, trying to make sure that you were expanding and making it what it can be.
yeah, so Kristen and Cam, who are the co-founders of the company, um, they they really so they have grown it, basically bootstrapped it to where it is today. And then they took on, or I think around December, they took on some investment to really like take some money and put it towards the growth of the company. But they wanted to do it in a really meaningful way. So they talked to a few different people that had phenomenal resumes and backgrounds, and I'm sure would have been able to do a great job. But really what they were looking for was like somebody who really personally understood the value of what they had built, and what that could mean to a lot of other patients and people across the country. And so they reached out to me in December and said, hey, we're looking for an SVP of growth and partnerships, like, is this something that you'd be interested in?
So
um, and so at the time, um, like I was making the most money I'd ever made in my career. I kind of was, you know, uh, doing pretty well financially, but I just could not stand what I was doing. And, n nothing against the people that I was working with or anything, but I just didn't believe in what we were doing morally or ethically. And I just needed a change. And, I go back to kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like, I think God puts opportunities in your lap at the right time. I mean, I've been praying, God, open the right doors for us and give me the courage to be able to walk through them. And they just texted me out of the blue, and I was like, yeah, let's set up a time to talk. And so started talking to them, and it worked out. I was like, there's such an opportunity to take this really differentiated model that offers, medicine and movement together under one roof and scale it across the country and be able to do a ton of good for a lot of people that really need it. And
yeah,
and so,
if you dive into mental health, I mean, that's all I've been doing for the last 8, 9, 10 years, specifically with
yeah.
people is mirror matching the movement to the mental health, and because they're
Mhm.
so interconnected that a lot of the therapies that miss the entire body piece, but the entire body piece, the research indicates like is a
Yeah.
critical and possibly even the largest element of your mental health.
Mhm.
So if you get that
Yeah,
all under
so
one roof, that's pretty amazing.
yeah, so imagine being able to take an offering like that and go and partner with, say, like an Emory University or Winship Cancer Center here in Atlanta that's giant. And all of these patients are going through and they're getting hit with, which obviously they need to, right? Like chemo, immunotherapy, radiation, all of that when it's appropriate. But being able to say, hey guys, like there's so much more to this than just those three areas. Like, let's focus on this person as a whole and make sure that they have, their energy levels are as optimized as they possibly can be. Let's try and offer them uh just additional like nausea control outside of being in the hospital and being hooked up to an IV. Like it's just little things like this that come in and let us work with you. We'll put together a personal training program for an oncology patient. And that does not look like the guy over here that's, doing, power cleaning 200 pounds, right? Like
Yeah,
we're going
no.
to work with you to, yeah, we're gonna work with you just to get your blood flowing. Like let's flush some of these chemicals out. Let's get you into a sauna.
Yeah,
Let's there's so much stuff that you can do, and being able to partner with these large organizations is really what I'm kind of focused on
yeah,
right now, whether that be, the hospital side or even the employer side.
yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good that we can do. So,
I mean, it sounds like it. I mean, there's definitely an opportunity for it, especially in that area of the country where there's so much cancer,
hmm.
with the off run of glyphosate down the Mississippi and all the stuff that's in it.
Yeah,
So like, there's a lot going on in that region of the country for sure. Well, Bo, thank you
definitely.
for taking the time. It's been a pleasure talking to you, despite the fact that I took you down a few rabbit holes that maybe.
That's all right. I appreciate it, man. It was
Maybe-
it was it was a lot of fun.
Well, good. If people want to get a hold of you or they want to learn more about it, I assume we just send them to statwellness.com. Any other place?
Yeah, statwellness.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. Just my name, Beau Barron. So I know on here it says Alva Barron, but I go by Beau, which is spelled Beau. So yeah,
Which means
should be.
beautiful in French,
Yeah,
which is probably why
that's
he
right.
goes by it.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Have a great one, man.